for my voice, but I have never seen anything like it.
You believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, always, Andrew Zimmel. Fun day on the podcast. We're talking about Cam Newton and his release from the Carolina Panthers. Also, at the end of the podcast, we're going to talk about why the NCAA, again, shot the bed with this Trevor Lawrence situation. But first, we got to mention that the NL West preview is out. I talked about the top players from the 2000s on the NBA podcast, 52 through 36 today, 35 through number 1 on Thursday and Friday. So you want to tune into those. Always fun to talk about players from the past. All right, let's get into it. Cam Newton. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I have a love-hate relationship with Cam Newton. I'm going to tell you why. So Newton's best season comes in the form of a Heisman Trophy campaign in the 2010 season. That season, Cam Newton not only won a national championship with the War Eagles, with Auburn, not only did he throw for 2,800 yards and 30 touchdowns, not only did he win a Heisman Trophy, he stole a chance for Andy Dalton to be the best quarterback in the draft. Now, I got to tell you, at the time, in 2010, I was a young pup. I was in middle school. I was rooting for TCU. I was rooting for the Horned Toads because everybody I knew was either an A&M or a Longhorn fan. There was no in between. Nobody was rooting for Baylor. Nobody was rooting for Tech. Everybody that I knew at my school was either gig 'em or hook 'em. There was no in between. So I decided to be different. I've always been the type to try to think outside the box. I was rooting for that red-headed kid from Katy who had an incredible high school career, had an incredible career at TCU. I was in. I remember watching TCU games on CBS Sports and the MAC, a lot of MACtion, and how he was just winning game after game after game. TCU had the cool purple colors. My favorite color was purple. It just made sense. Andy Dalton was the best quarterback in college football that year, but because of Cam Newton's incredible season, he gets no recognition for it. TCU was the number 2 team in the country all the way up to the last vote. And before we had the college football playoffs, for you young kids at home, we had the AP poll. We had the polling from the computer. It was crazy. Didn't make any sense, it seemed like. But because the SEC teams were better, quote unquote, and because the Pac-12 had a, quote, harder schedule, Oregon and Auburn faced off in the national championship, and TCU got relegated to the Rose Bowl. And they had one of the most incredible Rose Bowls of the last 20 years, playing against Wisconsin. J.J. Watt was on the field. A lot of NFL talent, but Andy Dalton slipped to the wayside. So then fast forward to the NFL draft. I was saying, man, I hope Andy Dalton falls to my Minnesota Vikings, but I think everybody knew that Cam Newton was going to be the consensus number 1 overall pick that he was. He goes to the Carolina Panthers. And it takes, you want to argue 4 years, you want to argue 2 years. It takes a little bit before a team can successfully build around their quarterback. It's not rocket science, it's GM science. It takes a while for a team to figure it out. That first season, in 2011, Cam Newton throws 21 touchdown passes, 17 interceptions. The media freaks out. Well, Cam Newton can't throw the ball well. Cam Newton can't read a defense. He's a rookie. He wins Rookie of the Year, but people are saying, can we really build around a run-first quarterback? Can we really figure out a way to build around this guy? I think a lot of people would say, yeah. So then fast forward 4 seasons, he goes 15-1 with the Carolina Panthers. He throws 35 touchdown passes to 10 interceptions. And Ron Rivera You want to argue with me about this, you can till the cows come home, till the sun rises in the west. Ron Rivera didn't know how to use Cam Newton. He didn't have the right assistant coaches to figure out how to use Cam Newton. They wanted to use him as a running quarterback. They wanted to use him as a third running back instead of what he really was, an incredible passer. A guy who could launch the ball down the field. I've said this before, I'll say it again. The reason that Michael Vick, the reason that Lamar Jackson, those players work in the NFL is because they have great arms and then their legs are an addition. The pocket collapses, well, I can make something happen. There's a problem with the coverage, say a safety fakes them out, blitzes, well, they're quick enough, they're fast enough to get up and move. Look at John Elway, you look at Steve Young, I should say. You look at these great quarterbacks in NFL history. For some reason, they don't get labeled the same, well, he's a run-first quarterback. Those guys had great arms. Cam Newton has a great arm. And it shows throwing 35 touchdown passes and then running for 10 more and winning an MVP and going 15-1. And going to the Super Bowl to face the Orange Crush reborn in the Super Bowl, and then it falls apart. And then you look at the next couple years, he plays 15 games in 2016, throws 19 touchdowns. In 2017, 16 games, throws 22 touchdowns. 2018, he only plays 14 games, throws 24 touchdowns. The interceptions have always been in the double digits. But again, I don't really blame that on Newton. I blame that more on the type of offense that they're running. He's never been 100% healthy after that Super Bowl season. And I firmly believe, as a guy who's coming onto the Cam Newton bandwagon late, as a guy who rooted against this dude in college, wanted him to throw interceptions, wanted his team to lose so that my team could sneak into the national championship, I can firmly tell you today, in March of 2020, that Cam Newton is one of the best 15 quarterbacks in professional football. I don't understand how the media has twisted it. I don't understand what fans are watching. But I'll tell you this. When I'm watching games, when I'm watching Cam Newton play, I'm not only invested in what he's going to do, I'm hanging on every play. Because he's athletic enough to get out of the pocket. Now, is he quicker than Lamar Jackson? No. Does he have a better arm than Patrick Mahomes? No. But the thing is that he's a good enough quarterback to win a Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes was helped greatly by Andy Reid. I don't think anybody can argue with that. Lamar Jackson's been helped incredibly by John Harbaugh buying into the system, buying into him, changing everything to work around his quarterback. Jim Harbaugh, his brother, he worked with Cap because they had a great defense, but because Harbaugh knew, okay, Kaepernick has this special ability to not only throw the ball, but he's a mobile quarterback, and we're going to build around this guy. We're going to make our system fit with this guy. What happened to Cam Newton in Carolina is not unlike what happened to Donovan McNabb in Tennessee, is not unlike what happened to a lot of quarterbacks in a lot of situations, where the coach has one philosophy and he wants his quarterback to fit that philosophy. He wants that quarterback to fit into the system instead of build a system around his quarterback. There's a couple guys in this league who've come in, quarterbacks who've come in this league, and you think to yourself, this is a game changer. This is a special talent. This guy could make it in this league. For every Jared Goff, who goes number 1 overall, for every Sam Bradford, who goes number 1 overall, there's guys like Carson Wentz. There's guys, dare I say, Dak Prescott, who are special talent, elite talent. They come later in the draft, even if it's a second overall pick. They come later in the draft. They're not everybody's top pick, and they make impacts. Cam Newton is a special type of player, consensus number 1 overall pick, a former MVP, and what happens is Carolina decides to not only draft a quarterback in Kyle Allen, but now they go and they sign Teddy Bridgewater, who, look, he did a really good job in New Orleans. He did a really good job in Minnesota as a starting quarterback, but let's not kid ourselves here. Teddy Bridgewater's not a better quarterback than Cam Newton. And then they bring in P.J. Walker, who I like, did a good job in the XFL, from what everybody tells me. Now, I don't think a ton of people watch the XFL like that. You can ask your friends, but I have yet to meet somebody who was devoted to an XFL team Getting rid of Cam Newton, if you're Carolina, doesn't make any sense. Trading for Kyle Allen, if you're Washington, doesn't make any sense either. Everything that's happening in the NFC, the bottom feeder teams, I don't know what these people are doing. I honestly don't. How are you going to get rid of Cam Newton? And this is what leaves us. I will leave you with this for the Cam Newton Carolina debacle, because that's what it is. They had a number 1 overall pick who was supremely talented, but they never wanted to change the way that they did things. They had an incredible girlfriend, but when the girlfriend asks, hey, can you pick up your underwear every once in a while? Instead of picking up your underwear, you break up with your girlfriend. What are you doing, man? That doesn't make sense. Carolina is forever going to be a team that is going to regret what they're doing, is getting rid of Cam Newton. So let's switch to Cam. You're good, dude. This is what you wanted. Go to a team that's going to make you win, that's going to let you win. Because Carolina wasn't letting you do that. Carolina was holding you back. Running the ball on 3rd and 1. You're the quarterback. You don't need that. Where are you going to go? Now, I've talked about it before. Before we did the all 10 best free agents left, I was saying Jameis is the best quarterback available right now. 26 years old. He just got LASIK. I like it. I know a lot of people kidded around with Jameis. People kick with the bucket with this guy, thinking that he's kind of a goofball, which I think he is. Don't think he's a good NFL quarterback. Well, that's a lie. He led the league in passing last year. Threw 30 TDs. Got an eye surgery. Now he can see. Now he doesn't see both different colors mixed up. He can see his team versus the other team. I said that I thought that the Patriots made the most sense for Jameis because they can go get a guy who's big boomer bust, sign him to a cheaper contract, a prove-it contract with some incentives, and then you can see what happens. But now, Carolina just lets this guy go. They got the biggest fish in the pond when we talk about quarterbacks that are going to get moved around. Biggest fish in the pond. And they say, yeah, no, you're good. We're good. You can go. Pick up your bags. Scatter. Get out of here. And if I'm New England, Cam, proven winner, MVP, went to a Super Bowl. He knows what it's like to win. He knows what it's like to lose. That's the other thing. I want a guy, if I'm in New England, who wants just as much of a prove-it type of deal as Belichick does. Tom Brady comes into your office and says, hey, I want to feel loved. I want a big contract. I'm an old man, but hey, I don't play like it. We could have won a Super Bowl last year if you would have given me some weapons. So instead of going out and getting more weapons, I want you to give that money to me. Belichick says, kick rocks. Have fun in Tampa Bay, the 5th best city in Florida. Good luck. Now you get a guy like Cam Newton, who's been scorned by his former team. Team drafts you number 1 overall. You're expecting that to be a lifetime deal. You're expecting to be there for the foreseeable future. You're thinking to yourself, I'm going to get my number retired here. I'm going to be in the Ring of Honor. I'm going to be in the Hall of Fame. That's what every draft day prospect thinks, especially a quarterback going number 1 overall. And then you have the incredible Superman season in 2015. And 4 or 5 short years later, they say goodbye? All right, fine. Let me go to New England, a weak AFC East with a stellar defense. And I'm going to show you, Carolina, I'm going to show you 30 other NFL GMs. I'm going to show you, Tom Brady, that I can take this Patriots team that you lost in the first round with. I'm going to take them to a Super Bowl. I'm going to win a Super Bowl. I'm going to beat the teams that didn't believe in me, and I'm going to prove it. Prove myself to these other NFL GMs who don't want me, don't want to touch me, don't want to trade for me. Now, does Cam Newton need to prove it? To me, no. As a fan of his, as somebody who's watched him play from college to now, I don't think he has anything to prove. I think he's done everything that he needs to do on the field. He was injured. He had issues. I don't want to be the person saying that it was concussions, but I will be the person whispering that I thought that he kind of got banged up in some of those playoff games. That wild card game against the Saints, I am not for sure, but according to every report I've ever read from watching that game, looks like he was seeing double. So when we look at Cam Newton now, you got to ask yourself two big questions. One, is Carolina better without Cam Newton? I think the answer is no. Two, is Cam Newton better without Carolina? Definitively yes, and it's going to prove itself this offseason when he signs with the New England Patriots. All right, before I let you go, we got to talk about Trevor Lawrence, got to talk about the NCAA. So the NCAA, we all know, one of the worst, if not the worst, organization in sports. You want to talk about Donald Sterling? Okay, fine. I'll give you that one. You want to talk about horse racing and how they have like a terrible way of treating the animals? Yeah, all right, I'll give you that one. But from an organizational standpoint, from a top-down standpoint, there's only a handful of groups who are more despicable, more disgusting than the NCAA. The NCAA, the same organization that was one of the last to call off their tournaments, the NCAA, the last one to get on board with paying players, the last one to look at the system that they've built, and I get it, it's a 100-year-old system. The last one to get on board and say we need to make some changes here, they decided to shut down Trevor Lawrence's GoFundMe account. So, why was he doing this? Is Trevor Lawrence trying to profit off his likeness? The contrary. Lawrence and his girlfriend, according to reports, were trying to get a GoFundMe to raise some money for people who have been out of work, whose jobs have shut down due to COVID-19, due to the coronavirus. They were trying to raise some money to help pay some rents, put some food on the table for those less fortunate. It raised a couple $1,000s, and the NCAA shut it down because they don't want players profiting. They don't want players making any sort of money outside of, say, an on-school job. I think if Trevor Lawrence wanted to flip burgers at the local burger joint on campus, I think they might let him do that. But they're not going to let you get any sort of money. They're not going to let you set up a GoFundMe. Just another example of the NCAA being completely, totally ass backwards when we talk about this type of stuff. That just so blind to every situation, not thinking about things before they do them, not thinking about the consequences of things before pulling the trigger. Laughable. Laughable, the NCAA. So, that's going to do it for the podcast. Check in tomorrow when we talk about all the news and notes. Hopefully Cam Newton gets signed in the next couple hours, and we can say, hey, look at that. Cam Newton got signed. Pretty cool. What are the odds for that team to win the Super Bowl with Cam Newton under center? Also, I'm going to talk to you about some of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL and how this NFL draft is going to, usurp some of those guys. And lastly, tune into the NL West podcast that came out today. You're going to want to check that out. It's the last baseball podcast you're going to get for a while, so enjoy it. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Please continue to stay safe. Continue to wash your hands, social distance yourself, and listen to this podcast.